Best ever listeners, welcome to the best real estate investing advice ever show. I'm Ash Patel and I'm with today's guest, Tim Vest. Tim is joining us from Huntersville, North Carolina. He is a full-time technology manager for a large bank and investor. Tim is a KP, GP, and LP in multifamily syndications. Tim, thank you for joining us, and how are you today?
Hey, Ash, how you doing? I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
I'm very well. Tim, before we get started, can you give the best ever listeners a little bit more about your background and what you're focused on now?
Yeah, sure. Again, Tim Vest, got an IT background. I've been doing IT for 23 years, ever since I graduated from NC State here in North Carolina. Strong background in IT. Founded a couple of small little IT startups, a couple of app companies. And then around 2006, got into real estate. Met a couple of guys I was working with at an IT company, and they were doing some real estate investing, and it kind of piqued my interest. Had always had some interest in the real estate space, so got involved with doing land development, buying raw land, getting it ready for developers, and then selling it off to them, and did that for a couple of years until 2008, 2009 happened, and you know, hit a little bit of a snag with that. But then around 2010, started to get back into it with some fix and flips and single family rentals, and around 2018, 2019 made a pivot into the multifamily space, and that's where my focus is now.
IT guys doing land development. What's going on?
Yeah, so IT guys doing land development. So the way that happens is, in the IT world, we make pretty good salaries, tend to have a little extra income. And so we were able to leverage our income, our W-2s, and our credit to work with developers that needed help getting land prepped to bring it to the general public. A lot of times these large home builders, or even small home builders, they leverage their own credit, their own capital to secure the land, or they work with a landowner to secure the land, but then they look for people to come in and help them with the capital needed to then put utilities and infrastructure in place to then actually build a land.
You guys were essentially money partners on the deal.
Yeah, pretty much. Yep.
What kind of returns did you see from that?
Significant. So on those types of deals, I'll just give you one example. In those types of deals, we would buy on 100-acre plot, we'd buy 10 acres for, say, $500,000. And then within 18 months, we would typically sell that back to the developer for $625,000. So on those $500,000 plots, $450,000 of that was financed, $50,000 down from us, and then a total cash return of $125,000. In addition to our 50 back within 18 months.
Beautiful story.
Yeah.
Tim, in 2018 multifamily, did you get tired of the single families?
Not so much that I got tired of it. Well, the land thing that stopped happening in 2008. Our development partners, with the 2008 market crash for real estate, they ceased to exist anymore.
Did you guys get burned on that?
Oh yeah, big time.
To the
tune of about 3 times what we actually made.
Oh no! So everything you put in was washed away plus some.
Yeah, and we spent about 2 years cleaning that up, just personally cleaning that up, because we, as a lot of people, not just land, but even homes at the time, something that you had a loan on for $500,000 may only be worth $250,000. And in some cases, banks were calling loan dues to get, risky credit or credit they deemed risky off their books. So, we went through that.
So you guys were in the weeds for a while. Luckily, you still had your IT career.
Yeah, we were in the weeds. Fortunately, I looking back on it, one of the best things coming out of that was we did not know at the time about other people's money. So we did not have investors. We were doing it all with our own. So the only money we lost was ours. And so while that was painful, I was at least able to put my head on the pillow at night knowing that I didn't lose somebody else's money. Because that's a whole different ball game.
That's a whole different ball game. And
Yeah.
Tim, were you jaded and just sitting on the sidelines for 10 years when it comes
No.
to real estate?
Yeah, so I was on the sidelines for a couple of years. I got back in a couple of years later with the fix and flip and single family stuff. So I wasn't so much jaded. One thing, for a couple of years sitting there cleaning things up, what I kept looking back at was, hey, I know things went south, but look at what I was able to do in a short period of time. I was able to take 50,000 and turn it into 125,000 in a very short time. So instead of being jaded, what I actually started to look at was, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? Where did I put myself in a risky position? And, I've said this a couple of times to a few different people. What I kept coming back to was, I didn't have cash flow on these properties, so I couldn't wait things out. And I had no exit strategy that was not dependent on the developers themselves. So when my developer partners went away, I had 10 acres of land sitting in the middle of the North Carolina mountains with no infrastructure. You couldn't get to it without a 4x4 or on foot. So, that was difficult for someone like me that wasn't in the development space themselves. So no exit strategy. There was nothing else I could do with this land at the time. So
And
moving.
did that developer just disappear, just ghosted you guys?
No, to their credit, they didn't really ghost us or disappear. They couldn't do business. They were over leveraged. Banks were calling on them too. They just had to close the doors as well. I would be remiss if I said that it wasn't painful for them. Those development partners had been in business for a very long time, 20 years plus.
Yeah.
And they no longer existed after that. So I'm sure that was tough for those guys.
Yeah. So single families and then to syndications. What was that? How'd you come along? How'd you come to find that?
Yeah. So probably the same way a lot of other people do. Again, single family, I was renting them, saw the cash flow, loved it, didn't scale very well. Although I think there's some ways now to do it a little bit better. But it wasn't scaling very well. I'd created basically another full-time job for myself, and I was reaching limits to what I could do with my own money. So I started to look for other places to go. And as I was looking where to pivot, sell off my portfolio and pivot into, one of the things I kept saying to myself was, I have experience with tenants and renters. Why can't let me just do this in properties that are bigger than a single family home? So let me do it in a quad or a tri or a fiveplex. And then I met a mentor who was like, well, why are you stopping at fiveplex? Let's talk 20, 30, 40, 50 units. He's like, the more tenants you can get under a single roof, the better it scales. So that's kind of how I landed in the multifamily space, was, by taking some of the experience that naturally transitioned from single family into multifamily. And then one of the biggest things I did for myself was finding a mentor that would help me move into that space.
And what was your first syndication?
So my first syndication was actually as an LP. I did not go in as an active partner at the time. I wanted to get some experience, so I invested in as an LP in a 42 unit property in Mobile, Alabama. That was the first multifamily syndication that I participated in.
How are the numbers on that?
Yeah,
The returns.
they're good. We're still in that deal. So far the numbers are good. I think we're coming up on a refi event here in the next 60 days, where it's looking like all investor capital is going to come back to the investor. So I'll get my initial capital back. And so far we've been hitting the pref, which is right out of 7 pref every quarter. So can't complain right now.
Yeah, Tim, I love that you invested as an LP first before becoming a GP, because I think it's so important that people see things from the investor's perspective, the communication, the returns, the treatment of the investors is so important.
Yeah, and I also wanted to understand before I went to ask people for money into a syndication, I wanted to understand being an investor in a syndication as well. I wanted to see it through the lens of an investor before I took on the role of asking people for their money.
How did you choose this particular deal to invest in?
So I was working with a couple of different syndicators at the time. Actually, I was trying to vet them out, getting to know them, and it just so happened that I had built a pretty good relationship with the sponsor team on this one. So when it came time, when I started to feel comfortable with investing as an LP, I kind of gravitated towards this group of guys because I had built a really good relationship with them. And yeah, that's how I landed
Are
there.
they local to you?
They are not local to me. So I'm in Huntersville, and
Okay.
they're actually on the ground there in Mobile.
So great question is how did they and you build a great relationship remotely? Because I think there's some valuable lessons to be learned here.
Lots of conversations, lots of Zoom conversations, lots of phone calls, and quite frankly, texts at 11 o'clock at night where we're just chatting with each other. It wasn't, it really wasn't that difficult for me. Again, I'm being in the IT space. I fully admit that I'm used to doing a lot of things remotely. I've managed teams overseas for years and built relationships that way. So, I was comfortable with that. And I feel like I have a pretty good read of most people, through those types of means of communication. But it wasn't quick. I didn't talk to them one time and decide to do it. I was having multiple conversations with them over the course of months.
And what was it that they did that the other syndicators didn't? Was it just continuing to have conversations with you over time? Did the other syndicators not spend as much time with you?
So here's one of the funny things. This particular syndicator, in all the conversations we had, never once asked me to invest in their deal or asked me about money. It was just conversations. His kids, my kids, what he and his wife are doing, what me and my wife are doing, what my goals were as an investor, those types of things. Never really, hey, do you have $50, $100,000 to put into a deal? Nothing like that. So that was one of the things I liked was, they were just, this particular guy was just being very genuine, and it didn't come across as a hard sell. It just seemed to be like building a relationship, building a rapport. And I really like that because quite frankly, that's how I approach things as well. I like to know people that are investing with me before we go down that route.
Tim, did you initiate every conversation, whether it was on the phone, Zoom, or text, or did they proactively reach out to you throughout this process?
It was a mix of both. It was a mix of both. So I didn't initiate every conversation. They didn't initiate every conversation. There were times when they would reach out to me. There were times when I would reach out to them. So it was definitely a mix.
That's great. So they took an empathetic approach to really learn about you and not just, hey, are you going to invest or not?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, that's great. So when it comes time for you to do your own syndication, take me down that route.
Yeah. So when it came time for me to do that, my first syndication was not in a deal on the GP side. The first one I did on the GP side was not in a deal that I found myself. I had a partner or a connection here in the Huntersville, Charlotte area, North Carolina area, who was doing a deal in Winston-Salem, and he reached out to me saying, "Hey, would you be interested in participating on this?" And we knew each other through mutual connections and had some conversations before. Oddly enough, we worked W-2 jobs at the same company, and so I met him for coffee. We chatted, we talked for a little bit. I didn't commit at that time. Went home, thought about it for a couple of days, had a few more conversations with him, and then said, yeah, I'd be interested in participating on this, playing some boots on the ground since I'm not too far from Winston-Salem, and also raising some capital on it. So committed to raising $500,000 in 2 weeks, and hit that number.
Is
In
it your
less than,
IT buddies?
no, it wasn't my IT buddies. It had been, it was people that I'd been having conversations with over the previous year, because when I say I pivoted into multifamily, it's been a good year to year and a half pivoting and laying some groundwork, laying the foundation, building my network before I did my first LP deal, and definitely before I participated in my first syndication as a GP.
Can we dive into that as well? I think that's so important. So
Sure.
the time that you spent building your network, marketing yourself, what types of activities did you do to accomplish that?
Yeah, so a number of things. One, like I mentioned earlier, finding a mentor. That was one of the biggest things for me. Is I knew from my land development days that I wanted somebody that had been there, done that here in the multifamily space, and I wanted to be able to have access to that individual. So spent some time finding that person, build a network around that, vetted my mentor. I think I nailed it down to like 3 guys, and I was like, all right, now I'm going to kind of stalk them a little bit, and quietly monitoring what they were doing, looking up their deals, looking up their track record, and landed on a guy out of Ohio, and started working with him, and that went really, really well. I knew that one of the places that I would need a push was in the capital raising space, building my network of investors. So I targeted, went after a mentor that would be able to help push me in that space, and he definitely did. Completely changed my mindset around those types of things. And then went about spending the next year kind of building my network of investors through friends and family, through just coffee conversations, through Zoom meetings, and through social media, quite honestly. And leverage LinkedIn and Facebook quite a bit, consistently every day, multiple times a day, and then would have conversations with people I'd meet through that. And then I also set aside a chunk of money for myself that I always call kind of personal development, personal education, that I would use for joining mastermind groups and building my network through mastermind programs with people who were, looking to do the same thing in real estate. So all of that combined.
You put a tremendous amount of time into this. And, when people think I need to grow my network, I mean, that's a lot of effort that you put into it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's not quick. It's not quick for sure.
And then how did you market yourself? How did people know that, hey, you're also a real estate investor and not just an IT guy?
I just talked about things I'd done. I was very open about things I had done. I was very open about the mistakes I'd made back in 2007, 2008. I was very open about, where I had gone wrong there, as well as how I pivoted and went into, other areas of real estate. And I would just have conversations about that. So I think the feedback I get from people a lot is that they feel like it's genuine, and they're appreciative of the fact that I'm willing to not just talk about everything that went right, but I'm also willing to talk about things that didn't go so right.
That is incredible. And are you doing a lot of this on social media or in person or both?
Both social media, in person, and then through Zoom calls and phone calls.
And you are a KP, LP, and a GP. Can you explain the difference between a KP and a GP for our listeners?
Yeah, so a GP has a much more active role, at least in my mind. The way I separate it is a GP has a much more active role. A KP can be active, but typically not as much. But a GP is involved in all aspects, or can be, from capital raise, investor relations, um, uh, asset management, those types of things of when you get the property under management. KP is a little bit more of just kind of doing the sponsorship piece of it. In fact, I'm actually talking to somebody right now about being um, the KP on one of their deals that they're doing, where they need somebody to come in and help them qualify for a Freddie loan. So we're talking about, what my background is, what my business partner's background is, and if we are able to help them qualify for that. So I think that kind of sums it up.
Yeah. So a KP or a key partner has a specific role
Right.
that they have to fulfill. And in return, they're often awarded equity in the deal.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So what are you working on now? What's the deal that's in front of you?
So the deal we're working on right now is a deal in Georgia. We don't actually have it completely nailed down, so I'm not going to talk too much about exactly where it is. But we're working on
Just give us
a
coordinates, latitude and longitude.
yeah, we'll just say north of Florida. um, but we're working on a deal in Georgia right now that is 56 unit property. And we're looking to get into that one for a little under 60,000 a door. And the cap rate would be around a 7 cap on purchase, which right now sitting here today is pretty good with the way the market's going right now. So that one will be a true value add. There's quite a bit of work that needs to be done on it, quite a bit of exterior work, but nothing that's like real scary. We've walked into properties where our G our general contractor or our engineers like, yeah, you need to do significant work to make sure this building doesn't fall down. This one is more cosmetic. There's just some neglect on the outside, overgrown bushes, need some paint here and there, take some graffiti off some storage units in the back, stuff like that. So we're real excited about that one, and that'll actually be our first foray into Georgia. We've done Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, into Alabama, but we skipped over Georgia up until now.
How did you find that deal?
Broker connection, completely off market. We have a strong broker connection with a really good independent broker who seems to like how we take deals down, how smooth we try to make the process. And, once we proved that we had the ability to close and that we could close smoothly, we start to, those types of things start to show up in our inbox, or we start to get phone calls on those pretty quickly.
So with all of your networking, do you also include brokers in that networking?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
100%.
that's important. So it's not just chasing people with money.
No,
It's
not at
people
all.
with deals, brokers, everybody.
Yeah, you got to have the full thing. I mean, obviously, if you do this long enough, you run into guys who, hey, all I want to do is raise capital, and I want to participate that way, and we really appreciate that, and we have partners like that as well, that are huge to being successful here. But at the same time, it takes the money and the asset, the property, to do a deal. So you got to find both, and that requires direct to seller, that requires broker conversations, you name it. And so yeah, those broker connections are key.
How much money are you raising for this deal?
So if we do this one, if we move forward with this one, the total raise will be just over 2 million.
And how much of that is CapEx?
The total CapEx on that one will be just under 1.2.
So $800,000 to acquire it, and then 1.2 for CapEx.
Yeah.
What's the purchase price?
So the purchase price on this one will be 3.4.
And is your capital stack fully loaded, ready to go?
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
What will the return to investors be?
So right now we always do conservative projections, almost worst case, but on a conservative underwriting model, we're looking at around an 18 IRR, just over a 10% cash on cash, and then just under 2.1 equity multiple on a 5-year hold.
Got it. Sorry for the pause. We'll edit this out. Anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah. Not at the moment.
All right. Well, okay. We'll edit this back in now.
Okay.
Tim, what is your best real estate investing advice ever?
Best real estate investing advice ever. For me, just based on my personal experience, I would just have to say, don't let the bumps, don't let getting knocked down once or twice keep you from getting up and moving forward. I could have easily let 2008 keep me from getting back into the real estate game at all. I didn't, and I'm very, very glad I did not. Over the last 5 years, especially over the last 18 months, it's been phenomenal.
Yeah, you are a great example of that. Tim, are you ready for the best ever lightning round?
I hope so.
All
Let's try.
right, we'll find out. Tim, what's the best ever book you recently read?
Best ever book I recently read is Who Not How, just all about scaling and enabling that.
And Tim, what's the best ever way you like to give back?
Best ever way I like to give back is just having conversations with other people who, like me, were just getting started off at one point in time. And so when people call and they have just questions about starting, I like to actually spend some time and talk to them about that.
And Tim, how can the best ever listeners reach out to you?
Yeah. We mentioned social media. I'm on LinkedIn under my name, Tim Vest, or you can grab me at tvest@harvestpg.com. So harvest, P as in Paul, G as in George.com.
Tim, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story from being an IT guy, getting rocked in 2008, but learning from that and picking yourself up. And now you're doing syndications, your partners on multiple deals. So thank you again for all of that advice today.
Yeah, Ash, thanks for having me on, and I appreciate it.
Awesome. Best ever listeners, thank you for joining us and have a best ever day. That was a great interview, man. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Went very well. What a great story. So I was an IT guy for 15 years as well before I found real estate.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
what did you do?
So I started out in IT consulting and ended up managing the whole IT department for the for-profit side of a large hospital.
Okay.
Everything except app development. So infrastructure support, just nothing with app development.
Yeah. So we're similar. I started out in IT consulting as well with IBM's Global Services Division. However, I've done everything but infrastructure. Most of my stuff is like I run an engineering team.
Okay.
So yeah.
So we'd make a great pair.
Yeah, absolutely. You can stand it up, and I'll develop the stuff for it. How's that?
Are you going to transition out of IT at some point?
Yeah, I've actually turned in my notice already. I'm going to have significant team turnover here in the next few months, so I have agreed to stay on until March to help my boss rebuild that team.
Yeah.
But once that's in place, I'm leaving in March 31st.
And once you leave, you can't get back.
Yeah, I don't want to.
Yeah.
23 years in IT. I'm done. I'm done.
Awesome, man. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And what about you? You're out of it completely?
Yeah, I left New Year's Eve 2009.
Okay. Wow.
So over 10 years. But I am everything but residential investor. So I do everything commercial. I do non-residential commercial. So retail, industrial, warehouse, medical, office, land. Just I can't deal with residential tenants.
Man, I need to talk to you about so you're familiar with land. Yeah, so you know
But we
some of
don't
what I was.
develop it.
Okay.
I partnered with a guy that was wholesaling, and this guy was wholesaling residential real estate forever. And for 10 years, I've tried to convince residential people to at least look at commercial. When I say commercial, non-residential commercial. And the mindset of people is like, oh, it's too hard, it's too much money. It's not. It's neither of those. But there's just not many people chasing these deals. So these wholesalers, and this one in particular, I'm like, in 10 years that I've owned commercial property, I've gotten one postcard from one person saying, hey, I'll buy your building for a great price. And it was a strip mall. So why, like apartment guys, you guys are getting hit up all the time. Hey, man, I want to buy your property.
Yeah.
But us commercial guys are never, ever getting hit up. So why is that, right? No one's doing it. There's just a lot of opportunity, I think, in that space. And
Yeah,
there's less competition.
So I should start sending you mailers, is what you're saying, huh?
I'll be honest with you. For the first time ever, I actually considered selling that property because the thought never crossed my mind because I think, I got to market it. I got to get all my paperwork in order. But like somebody like that, that's just willing to buy it, kind of got the wheels turning a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would encourage you to look at other asset classes.
Yeah. Hey, you caught me off guard a little bit on that question about the property in Georgia. Like those numbers those metrics. I know the equity multiple and the cash on cash is right. The IRR, I may have been a little off on. I didn't have it in front of me.
I think you're fine. And I think the IRR is what people look at the least. It's more cash on cash return, so to speak.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, this episode should air in a few weeks.
Okay.
And somebody from our team will reach out to you before it airs. They'll give you social media links and they'll promote it alongside of you.
All right. Well,
cool. Awesome, man. What a pleasure meeting you. Thank you.
Hey, Ash, I appreciate it. And thanks for having me on.
All right, man. Have a great day.
You too. Take care.
Bye.